It's a very serious subject, Faiza, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very serious. And I think that point there about listening to the groups that would be affected, and then there's, I'm not against this issue on principle. I can see the arguments, and I've heard really compelling stories where I understand that people would want to make that decision to end their life. But there's also disability groups, especially, that we're hearing a lot from. People around some of the clauses on mental health, people don't think that's strong enough. It's such a huge change, It, in a sense, it legalises state death. I mean, it's quite a big thing for us to move to, and I think there are some really serious concerns. So I actually think that it should fail at this point.
Okay.
We need quite a lot more
Mike,
before I would feel comfortable.
Well, I'm in favour of assisted dying, and the last sentence there involved the word state, and I don't think it should be so much an issue for the state as for the individual. And I think the individual should have more choice about how to end their life. Somebody told me when I was talking to them about this last night, it's not about shortening somebody's life, it's about shortening somebody's death, because death can be horrible. A friend of mine had stomach cancer. He was on morphine tablets. Once those morphine tablets wore off and he couldn't take any more, my mate was rolling around on the floor in agony, and I could see a reason for it. I thought the original safeguards were excellent, but I think the new adjusted safeguards are still OK, and I think it's an overcomplicated issue. If somebody wants to end their life because the quality of their life is so bad, then they should be given the ability to do that without the state getting too badly involved.
What about, Mike, the one issue is the classic thing where the older person, she's 84, no, that's my mum's age, I'm not using my mum as an example. She's 91, and her 8 kids are all saying the same thing to her, which is that we can't afford your care anymore. And she begins to believe it would be better for her kids, for her to be given the means to kill herself.
Yeah.
That's pressure.
Well,
that's not fair.
No. Is it pressure or is it part of the life cycle? When you get to 91 and you feel you're a burden on your children, that affects the mental state in which you live, and that might have some influence.
So you think that would be that decision would be rational, even though it's your kids leaning on you?
They're not leaning on you. You are suddenly realising that, your life now is having a huge effect on your children, even your grandchildren, and that will affect your mental ability to consider how long do I want to live. Sorry, just one more thing.
Quickly,
When my mum was 85, she said to my sister, I've had enough. Life had become too burdensome for her. And I think if old people think that way, they should have the ability to make their own choices.
But the question is, why, right? Because there is that, I get that, the individual decision, but we live in a society, and unfortunately this society isn't supporting people, isn't assisting them to live in the way that it should be. So our NHS has been in trouble for a while. We know that our social care is extremely expensive. We know that our end-of-life care is lacking, is underfunded, right? So only 50% of Mary Curie Centre did some work on this, only 50% of people that need that last palliative care are getting it. And so in that scenario, can you make a decision that isn't about, actually it's going to cost too much? And it's just like, I would hate for my parents, right? My parents have both passed away, but, for anyone in my family to think, oh, the reason that I should die early is because I want to give more money to my kids or whatever. And I would hate that.
Mike's taken the bull by the horns here, because he says part of the decision might be, I cannot impose a charge of £70,000 a year on my family for me to have care at home or whatever it is.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be, do you know what I mean? Like the sanctity of life.
But why shouldn't it be part of it?
Because, right, if you're making a decision, if you weren't thinking about those things, if you were like, OK, it's a decision, like, I personally think I've had enough or whatever, then that's... But if you're bringing money into it, I think it undermines a kind of central principle.
All right, let's take a call. Yeah. Lynn in Glasgow, hi.
Good morning, Jeremy.
Are you hoping this goes through? Because it may fail today.
I'm hoping it goes through. I have cancer. I have secondary breast cancer. It's not curable. It's only manageable. I'm taking treatment at the moment, and when that treatment stops working, then I'm not taking any more treatment. And I think I should have the right to die the way I want to die, and not in a hospital bed in pain or whatever.
There was a case in Belgium where a young woman took her own life under the law because she had just completely intractable depression. Now, how do we ensure that doesn't happen, Lynn?
Right, well, for starters, right, the very first point that nobody's actually mentioning is for you to get this, you need to ask for it. It's not a blanket of everybody's going to get it. You need to ask for it. You also need to have a 6-month diagnosis where the doctors are saying, right, 6 months is really where we think you're going to be. So there's the very beginning of this has got baked in.
Yeah, okay,
safeguards.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn, and all the best to you in dealing with your illness. I really appreciate your call. Carol is in Brighton. Hi, Carol.
Oh, good morning, Jeremy. Can you hear me?
Very well. Do you think we should go ahead with this?
No. I just told a little story about my mother. From her diagnosis of lung cancer until her death, it was 2 years, which is pretty traumatic. Now, I was told by the Macmillan nurse that she had 2 weeks to live. And in fact, she lived 3 months. Now, she was in hospital. She was obviously, I don't know how much, but on morphine. And in the final stages, she did know who I was. I was feeding her and doing what I could. The day she died, it was obvious that she knew who I was. And I sat with her. Took 3/4 of an hour for her to die in my arms.
Is it? I'm really sorry to ask a question in the middle of what is a very powerful account, but my question is, what you've given us a series of facts, and the facts could be on either side of the argument, actually, because you might be saying, yes, because you might be saying that last 2.5 months, when your mother at times did not know who you were, she shouldn't have had to live those last 2.5 months.
No, I didn't. I said I think she did know who I was by.
Okay, but it was she suffered and.
I wouldn't say she suffered that much because she was in a very nice hospital.
But she wouldn't have asked. You worried that she would have asked for assisted suicide if the law had been there?
No, she wouldn't. I would have hated it to give her.
I can tell
really
that.
Traumatic.
I wonder whether we're ready for. Thank you, Carol. Yeah. Whether we're ready for the trauma of saying, you know, how did your mum die, and people saying assisted suicide. It's quite.
Can I just say as well, I think something that Carol said there is really important in my own experience with my mum and the way she died, is that time of being there with them, even if it's like, you know, she thought she was going to die after 2 weeks, she had an extra 2 months. You know, every day you have with them is still, and they have with you, and like in and out of consciousness is still something, and it's.
I think there's two schools of thought on that. There's two schools.
But I do think there are some people that think that as well.
Yeah, that's true, but I mean, my dad really suffered, and I can't get the images out of my mind.
My mum wasn't suffering in that way, so I think it's a different,
And I think, again, I used the expression earlier, there's a good death and a bad death, and a bad death is a horrible thing to experience. I also think we should take out of the equation assisted suicide, because you're not committing suicide, you're trying to end your painful life.
But it is assisted suicide.
It's not assisted
suicide. But you're dying at your own hand, correct?
Chose to die. It's not assisted suicide. You chose to die. You're not saying, right, I'm going to, you know, suddenly end my life. You've made a conscious decision. My life is no longer bearable. I've decided to go.
Lots of people that you know end their lives and are not, you know, with a serious illness would say that too.
Let's go to Alan. Suicide. Alan in Hampshire. You work is it a community nurse, Alan?
I was a community carer for 20 years.
Okay, so you've seen a lot of people at the end of their lives.
I now have been diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Okay, I'm sorry to hear that.
I had a client had prostate cancer. We had to wash him, dress him. Well, we couldn't dress him because we couldn't get him out of bed. He was screaming like a hound. He was in so much pain. He was on the highest amount of morphine he was allowed to have. Towards the end of his life, his wife called an ambulance crew out because he was in so much pain.
Oh.
And the ambulance crew turned around and said, "We're ever so sorry. There's nothing we can do. He's going to die at any time." And I cared for this gentleman for about 4 months.
Oof.
And I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
No, well, you raise a good point. I always think, Alan, and you've maybe shown me the truth of this. I thought we'd sorted out pain control. So I thought that a big part of this argument, which is that you die in pain, is gone because we now can basically put people on automatic morphine. And what you've said suggests that I'm wrong.
But you can only put on so much a dose.
Yeah.
He was on the highest, and he was still screaming in agony.
See, back in the day, you go. Sorry, Alan. Beg your pardon.
My question is, all these MPs that are going to vote today, how many of them have actually seen somebody withering and dying in pain in front of them?
Okay, Alan. Thank you very much indeed. Of course, back in the day, you would have morphine, and they would up it, and they'd up it.
But it depends if you're at home, if you're in...
Yeah, but my point is they would give you more up to the point that you needed it, and at some point that level would be fatal. And the one word of why that changed is shipment. They just can't do, and doctors won't do that. They don't want to be prosecuted.
Yeah.
Derek in London, hello.
Hello.
Do you think we should, or the MPs should vote this thing through?
I think they should. I mean, I'm going through it at a time, and I've seen a partner die through it, and she was on so much morphine, she was comatose. I couldn't even talk to her.
But in a way, that's what morphine does, isn't it? That's the point.
I know,
of it. Yeah.
but I don't want to live like that. I'm not in pain at the moment. I was told I had 3 months to live in December. They stopped treatment. I've been through the chemo, the lot.
Oh.
And I'm still here. I class myself as lucky. If I wake myself up in the morning, I'm lucky.
Well, listen, Derek, keep going. Thank you.